Hey folks, welcome to another Triple T Thursday. For those just joining us, that's Tools, Tips, and Talk, where we'll discuss info for the knife maker. In today's episode, we're going to do some kydex sheaths. Someone ordered this knife today, and I realized I didn't have a sheath for it. And I've never done a video showing how to do a kydex sheath. I've done lots of leather videos, but never kydex. So I figured it's about time. Let's go down to the table and I'll show you what you're going to need. Okay, so let's see the basics of what you need for kydex. The first thing is obviously some kydex. These I get from Maritime Knife Supply. These two, this is just a black and a gray. These are the 60,000, so the 0.060 inches, and these are the thicker variety. This one is like a carbon fiber look, and this one is like a basket weave, and these are a little thicker at 80 thousandths. The thickness, the only thing that the issue with the thickness is sometimes you need bigger eyelets for the holes, and we'll talk about that a bit later. So you will need eyelets. These are what's going to hold your sheath together. You need a setter, so a setting, this little set to set the eyelets. If you have an arbor press, great. I'm going to show you how to do it without an arbor press. And then I use these clips, and there'll be links to all this stuff down in the video description. I use these because they're inexpensive. I think I pay, I don't know, $3 or $4 for these things. And then I just use some Chicago screws that go through the eyelets. And if someone wants to replace this with, say, a deep pocket clip or something like that, they can do that. You're going to need a press. And I made this press. I bought the foam from Maritime Knife Supply, and it just V's like this, and I'll show you a little more detail when we go to press our kydex. So that's the basics, and that's the great thing about kydex. It's pretty cheap to get into. The very first thing you want to do is take some painter's tape and cover the blade. And you're going to do that using between 3 and 4 layers of tape. And you want to get this nice and smooth, no wrinkles in the tape. And the reason we're using so many layers is because when we put this in the kydex, we want it to give a little bit of padding so that when we take the tape off, the knife fits really nice and doesn't contact the kydex. So we're going to be using 4 layers. I've got my 4 layers of tape just on the blade. I've pressed it in really nicely and no wrinkles. So next we need to decide what our sheath is going to look like. What I mean by that is how the sheath is going to be wrapped around the knife. Is it going to kind of be folded over a taco sheath where it's just going to be folded over the spine and then just eyelets on this side, which is what I prefer because it gives it a more slender profile. That really works well if you have a relatively straight spine on the knife. If the knife drops, it's a little harder to get that look. But that's what we're going to do for this one. I know exactly the size of kydex I need for this knife, but this is one of those things you don't want to try and underestimate and skimp. Kydex really isn't that expensive. Don't get a piece that's too small because you'll fold it over, it won't be big enough, and you've already cut it and you got to throw it away. So I happen to know that this is the size I use, and if you're curious how to do that, I put the knife, kind of center the knife in the kydex, and just make sure there's at least probably 3/4 of an inch on either side. Okay, and then it has to go, the front of your handle has to also go into the kydex, usually at least an inch, preferably a little more. This one is, it's about 1.25 inches or something like that. You can cut kydex with portaband. Honestly, it's easier. I just use these big snips, and I'm just going to snip out this piece. Kydex has a shiny side and a matte side. Typically, you're going to put the shiny side on the inside of the sheath and the matte side on the outside. So let's talk about the kydex press. This is one I made just with 3/4 inch plywood and the foam, which is special foam for doing kydex because it takes heat and it doesn't melt. I've set mine up this way. And that's because I do a lot of the taco sheaths, and you'll see when I do it, it's easier to put the hot kydex and the knife in like this and just kind of sandwich it and then close it like this. That's why I've put hinges down here so that this just pivots. Obviously these are really easy to make, so go make yourself one. As soon as I put the knife in, then I will just take these clamps that you can just, these pistol clamps, and just tighten it really, really strongly, and that will set your kydex. So let's go heat up this kydex and get ready to put it in the press. So for heating up the kydex, I just use my even heat, set at about 375. I make sure the ramp up speed is only about 500 degrees per hour. And I just use one of these sheet pans that fits perfectly in my LB18 even heat. And if you're going to use your wife's sheet pans, make sure you put some foil on the inside so it doesn't stink like kydex. So after this heats up, I'll put the kydex in, leave it in there. Like once it's heated up, I'll put it in there for 5 or 10 minutes. You'll see it'll be nice and pliable, and we'll be ready to go. One key here is to make sure your knife is centered in the kydex, and then when you put it in the press, I tend to push down on it to make sure that the spine is pushing down into the kydex to get a really nice fit. After a minute or two, I'll take some compressed air and just blow out the sheath just to make sure that it's set. Remember folks, if you need anything for knife making, whether it's kydex sheaths, steel, abrasives, tools, you name it, go check out Maritime Knife Supply. They got everything you need and more. So there's our sheath all pressed. Looks really good. You want to make sure it's nice and tight around this part of the handle, which it looks really good. This knife in particular has this little notch here, so it doesn't really come out unless you spread the sheath part a little bit. But that looks good. So now we're going to go with the bandsaw and just trim this up a little bit. Leave yourself lots of extra room, especially, see I didn't get it perfect here, to make sure you have room for your eyelets. The eyelets we're going to be using are these, okay? They are, you do a 1/4 inch hole for these eyelets. So I'm going to basically space these out. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you want to make sure that you have enough space around them. So usually I just put it like that and figure out how much space I'm going to need. So next step, we're going to grind the edges nice and smooth. We're also going to go to the small wheel and kind of take off about 1/2 of this section here, just so that we'll have clearance for that part of the knife. You want to do all this grinding before you put the eyelets in, because all of this little chaff that comes off, you want to make sure you get it out of the inside of the sheath, and it's much easier if you can spread the sheath apart and blow some air into it, and you'll see what I do later. And now we're going to try our sheath just to make sure our clearance works. And you can see all the stuff that's coming off it here. That's what we need to make sure we get out of the sheath, because that will scratch your blade. Okay, I'm happy with the fit. Now we're going to just take some 220 sandpaper and just sand the edge. So now we're going to put the holes for our eyelets. I like to do these 1 inch apart. It actually works out really well for these because these holes are, this to here is about 2 inches. So what I'll do is mark the very first one which is going to be about there. And then mark them an inch from there. And now that we've done all our grinding and everything is done, we're not going to be grinding or sanding any more of this. Now we can take some compressed air and blow the inside of this, spread it out a little bit and get all that crap on the inside. You need to get that out. Now it's time to do our eyelets. So the easiest way to do this is to just do it on your drill press, obviously if you don't have an arbor press. What I do is take this and chuck this all the way up into my drill press as far as it'll go. Okay, then tighten it. Okay, raise the table if you need to. Then you have your anvil. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take the eyelet, put it in the hole. Now what you need to do is spread apart the open end, this end of the eyelet. So you put it over top and you're just going to come down and just flare that out a little bit. And you're just going to do that with your drill press off, and just push down a little bit. Okay, not much, but just enough to flare it. That is key, because now you can take it and flip it over on the little anvil. And now come down and press it. And that will curl up those ends, and now you have a perfect eyelet. And now we're just going to do that on the rest of them. Now it's time to check the fit up. I've removed the tape. See that little click? That's exactly what we want. So all fits good. We got a couple other things to do. I want to put a little thumb ramp here so it's easy to knock the sheath off. Well, let's see, my camera messed up and I didn't get the footage of me putting in this thumb ramp, but really you're just going to take a heat gun, point it here, and then push this down with your thumb. And then try it. And if any point that it doesn't click anymore, sometimes it loosens up after you do the heat gun, just heat it up again and just hold it here and put your thumb here as usually works, because you want that nice click. So we're almost done. What I would normally do is buff the edge to make it look nice, but I got this great tip from Jay Nielsen when he was on the Hustle and Grind podcast. We're going to take a little bit of acetone and just rub it across here instead of buffing it, and that'll shine it up nice because acetone melts this kind of plastic. There we go, folks. There's our finished kydex sheath. Clicks nicely. I'm just going to put my clip on the end of it. And for these kind of clips, you have to take one of these guys and just kind of push it under here till it goes in that little channel there. Okay, so you got one that'll just nest in there. And these are Chicago screws that I'm using. And then and there we are, all finished with the clip on it. Knife clicks nicely. Good looking sheath. Thanks for joining me, folks. We'll see you on the next one.